Well, hello.
Hey.
Hey, how y'all doing tonight?
Good.
Yeah. Well, I'm Jonathan, and this is my beautiful bride, Stephanie. And together we're the Merchants. Yeah. I want to thank Dave. I want to thank you, Dave. Thank you so much for the blessing and this opportunity. And I want to thank you, veterans and first responders and family members. This is quite an honor just to be here in your presence.
All right. I'm so glad, just like Jonathan said, we're so glad to be here, and we're really excited to share our story, especially after, spending time talking with y'all, what you think it is versus, where we are. So we've been married for, it'll be 4 years in July, and Jonathan's been injured for 22 years. So that means, I wasn't there whenever he was going through his injury. But what you don't know, I don't have a wheelchair, the God's timing is just kind of an interesting thing. It was probably within 6 months. I had a traumatic loss in my family. And it left me in a wheelchair, but it left me wearing a mask. I didn't know I was wearing that mask for a long time. We'll hold that thought. So I have a question. If we were to invite you up here to dance with us, you don't have to respond, but I'm pretty sure I know probably about 3 responses we would get. One, I was like, oh, I have 2 left feet, or just no way, we're not going up there. There's probably another group of people, oh, I danced when we got married, I kind of know what I'm doing. Or if I have some liquid courage, I could probably dance with you. And then there's maybe some that love dancing. All right, well, I am in category number 1 when we first met. I am not dancing. And Jonathan invited me to his dance studio where he was taking lessons. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna go. So I'm driving to pull up to the studio, and you look in, the studio has like a big window, and it looks like everybody is dancing perfectly, and they all know what to do. And here am I, never danced really, and I don't know what I'm doing, and it took me, no joke, 15 minutes to get in there. And I know it was God getting me to say yes to something that I would learn to love with my husband. And so now I want you to hear his part of his story.
So I'm going to back up to December 11th, 1999. I woke up that morning to do PT with my unit down at Fort Hood. I was a 11 Mike mechanized infantry soldier. And so we ran 5 miles that morning. And then I worked all day. And after final formation, I set off to go be with my girlfriend for a weekend pass. That night, we were heading to Waco to go dancing. And it was raining. She was driving. I was a passenger. I wanted to down a few beers before I got to the bar to go dancing with her. And she lost control of the car. Next thing I knew, I woke up for just a brief moment, slumped over in the passenger seat, and I couldn't move anything, and then I passed out again. Then I woke up in the hospital with my parents telling me that I was a quadriplegic. And during the accident, we rolled several times. And during the rollover, I broke my neck in 3 places, C5, C6, C7, and instantly became a quadriplegic. And I couldn't move anything from the neck down at first. Fast forward a few months, that girl that I loved with all my heart walked away from me. She couldn't handle me being a quadriplegic. And then I was like, what now, God? Who am I? I thought I was a soldier. I was hard. I was athletic. I was the top of my, the top athlete in my unit. I loved doing PT. And I was having questions like, do you love me? Am I ever going to have someone love me again? Who's going to love me now? And I wouldn't know these answers until years later. And I went through a depression. I struggled. I had fits of anger. As you can imagine. And then God showed into my life. Romans 5, 3 through 5. For it talks about suffering and character. And how suffering produces character. And with perseverance. And I was like, suffering produces character. Oh, is that what you're doing, God? And so I was in Open Door Church years later in 2016, and I went up to the altar to get healing because I was just so tired. Even though I had Jesus in my life, I was just so tired. And that summer before I went to ask for healing, I prayed because I was just done. God, send me someone that'll love me. Love me and see the man that I am and not see my wheelchair, see my disability. And wouldn't you know it, God answered my prayer. I didn't know at the time, but God answered my prayer. I was heading back to go, my place in the church because I already had my seat. And there was this girl that I didn't know, and God put it on her heart. And he goes, you see that guy right there? You're going to be his healing.
Alright, so I love our story. This is God's story. And he tells that as in I knew confidently that I was going to be part of his healing. In my mind when that happened though, I thought, I'm going to be the one to pray for him. But at that time, I didn't go to pray for people like that. But let's back up a little bit. And I'm going to share my story. So I grew up in a small town on a farm with a family. My aunts lived on both sides. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. And we grew up in church. And when I was 12 years old, I woke up and found out my dad had passed away. And God's, brought layers of healing to that day. But back in 2019, he brought back the memory of that day that revealed an area of hurt that was still there, because there's layers of healing. And so I don't remember the bad things about that day, but the thing that stuck out was the first thing I did was get my brother and sister dressed. And then something, more stuff happened, and then I'm walking to my aunt's house to go to my cousin's basketball game. And I don't know if this was something that was actually said to me or if it was just something that I took in from what was going on, but they didn't know that my dad had passed away. And they didn't know what was going on. So, and I felt like I couldn't express my feelings. I couldn't, cry. And so at that time, I put on a mask. God revealed this to me later. I didn't, I put on a mask that I had to be strong for everyone else. And I kept wearing that mask throughout my life. I can be the good girl, I can be quiet, I can, go to college. And then I made some mistakes and I realized there's some kind of cracks in that mask. I can't always be the good girl, but that's not who God called me to be. that was what the enemy's plan was for me. It was to, to hide, but he was trying to silence my voice. Well, God brought us together because whenever I saw Jonathan, he wasn't, just going through the motions, doing what he had to do. He was living life. And so he was a catalyst for change in my life. Because I saw if he can live life, then why am I just doing what I have to do? And so he introduced me to new things like dancing. And so God just really spoke to me through dancing. So that's why we incorporated that. But God's used both of our brokenness to bring healing that, we didn't know we needed.
So, I want to challenge you all tonight. So when God tells you something, are you going to have a yes spirit? Are you going to be obedient? Even if it's uncomfortable? Even if it's totally out of your comfort zone? Are you going to be obedient? And I close with that.
Yes.